A rabbit jumped into the sick baby's cradle. What he did next left everyone speechless. The house was simple, made of wood, and it stood in a rural area where greenery dominated everything. The wind blew fiercely on stormy days, but that morning, the sun appeared shyly, lighting up every corner of the land. Inside, the family was going through anguished moments because little Miguel, only 6 months old, had been sick for days. Rosa, the mother, had deep circles under her eyes from so many sleepless nights. She spent her days preparing herbal teas and using cold compresses, trying to bring down her son's fever. Francisco, the father, did what he could to help. He tended the fields to put food on the table and ran to town whenever they heard about a new remedy, but nothing seemed to work. Miguel's condition wasn't improving, and fatigue overwhelmed the family. One morning, while Rosa was trying another herbal concoction, she heard a faint noise coming from the baby's room. Her heart froze. Could Miguel be crying again? Or was it something else? She dropped everything and ran to see. As she approached the crib, she stood still, unable to believe what she was seeing. A rabbit with completely white fur was inside, nestled beside Miguel, looking at him with its dark eyes. At first, Rosa almost screamed. She feared the animal might hurt the baby. But suddenly, she noticed something astonishing. Miguel, who until then had been weakly crying because of his fever, had stopped crying. He had his little hands on the rabbit's head, petting it clumsily, while the animal pressed its nose against the baby as if trying to comfort him. Rosa moved closer, still unsure what to do. The rabbit, instead of fleeing, stayed right there, snuggling against Miguel's little body. That was when the mother noticed that her son's breathing was calmer. It seemed the rabbit's presence had brought a peace that hadn't existed just a few minutes before. The fever hadn't completely disappeared, but that moment filled Rosa's heart with hope. Not knowing how to react, she called Francisco. Her husband appeared and was shocked by the sight. They exchanged astonished looks. What was a rabbit doing in the crib? And how had it entered the house without anyone noticing? Rosa explained that she had heard a strange sound and found it there. But instead of trying to shoo the animal away, she felt the need to let it stay, because Miguel finally seemed to have found some relief. Francisco agreed. Moving slowly, he grabbed a carrot from the kitchen and approached the crib, offering it to the rabbit. The animal accepted the food, eating calmly, as if it were already part of that family. Before long, Miguel fell into a peaceful sleep, clutching the rabbit's soft fur, and the rabbit also closed its eyes and stayed quietly beside the baby. The silence in the room was so soothing, it felt like a miracle. When the town Dr. Mario arrived for another visit, he was startled to see the rabbit in the crib. He tried to shoo it away, thinking it dangerous. But Rosa and Francisco explained what had been happening. They told him Miguel had improved a bit since the animal appeared. Curious, the doctor checked the baby's temperature and saw that the fever had gone down. He didn't know how to explain it, but he recommended continuing with normal care. If the rabbit wasn't harming the child, maybe it was just a harmless and, who knows, even welcome companion. That day, the rabbit stayed until nightfall. Then it hopped out of the crib and left as mysteriously as it had arrived. Miguel slept, almost the entire night, something that hadn't happened in weeks. Rosa finally managed to get some rest too. She woke up feeling more energetic to take care of her son the next morning. To everyone's surprise, the rabbit came back. It showed up at the door, sniffed the air a few times, and entered without ceremony. It seemed to know exactly where it was going. It hopped toward Miguel's room. This time, Rosa and Francisco weren't frightened. In fact, they were excited. They fed the animal lettuce leaves and small apple slices, while Miguel tried to grab its ears. The baby's smile was something they hadn't seen in days. Seeing that sparkle in Miguel's eyes gave his parents fresh hope. From then on, The rabbit visited Miguel almost every day. It would lie in the crib for hours, warming the baby with its fluffy fur. It also seemed to enjoy the gentle petting it received. Over time, Francisco decided to name the little creature, since it was practically part of the family. They chose to call it Branquinho because of its white fur. Branquinho became a frequent visitor to the house, coming and going at will, always returning to stay by Miguel's side. Neighbors, aware of the family's ordeal, came by to check on the baby. They were amazed to see Branquinho dozing peacefully in the crib. Some even crossed themselves, saying they had never seen anything like it. Others believed it might be a divine sign, as Miguel was visibly improving. The fever appeared less, and the boy was now able to laugh and babble cheerful sounds. Dr. Mario himself began observing Miguel with renewed curiosity. He examined the child, checking his weight and temperature, and found everything within normal limits. Miguel's recovery was so rapid that he couldn't explain it. Half-jokingly, he said that if there were another patient in Miguel's condition, he would recommend a rabbit as part of the treatment. With Miguel's health clearly on the mend, the house regained the light-hearted atmosphere the family loved so much. Rosa sang while washing the baby's clothes, and Francisco, now less worried, could tend the fields without an anxious mind. Occasionally, Branquinho left footprints on the porch, drawing attention to the fact that he wasn't an ordinary rabbit. He appeared at the most critical moments, as if he had an internal clock telling him when Miguel needed him. One day, Rosa decided to have a picnic by a creek behind the house. She wanted to celebrate that Miguel was almost fully recovered. She prepared some sandwiches and natural juices and asked Francisco to bring the baby there. To complete the celebration, Branquinho showed up, hopping along as if he had been invited. They spread a cloth on the grass, laid little Miguel in an improvised basket, and spent some wonderful family moments together. While they enjoyed the gentle sound of the water running through the creek, Rosa looked at Branquinho and felt immense gratitude. She remembered the sleepless nights, the constant crying, the worries. Now Miguel played with a flower in his hands, and Branquinho sniffed the baby's little cloth diaper, curious. The contrast was so great that Rosa couldn't hold back her tears. But these were good tears, from someone who realizes the worst is behind them. In the following months, they experienced many small joys. Miguel crawled around the house, and Branquinho followed him, or rather, went ahead, as if wanting to show him the way. It was impossible not to be moved by the unlikely duo, a baby and a rabbit, so close that they seemed to communicate through gestures and looks. If Miguel cried, Branquinho would come close and twitch his nose in a funny way. The baby would be distracted and in a few seconds was smiling again. News of the rabbit that helped heal the sick baby spread throughout the region. People came from afar to see the story for themselves. Some brought carrots for the little creature. Others said it was a miracle and asked Rosa and Francisco if they had made any special promises. But the family simply replied that they couldn't really explain what had happened. Their only certainty was that after Branquinho arrived, everything changed for the better. When Miguel turned 1, the family organized a small party in the yard. They made a simple cake, but filled with love. They hung colorful ribbons in some of the trees, and neighbors brought homemade sweets and savories. It was a humble celebration, but very meaningful. Everyone who, in some way, had witnessed Miguel's drama and been moved by his recovery was there. And, of course, the most important guest couldn't be absent, Branquinho. In the middle of the little party, as people chatted and laughed, Miguel crawled toward where Branquinho was. Noticing the movement, the rabbit perked up its ears. Struggling, the baby managed to hold onto the arm of a chair, stood up for a few seconds, and then tried to take a step toward his white-furred friend. It was the first time he'd stood on his own. At that moment, a hush fell over everyone. All eyes turned to that small scene. Miguel, still unsteady, managed to take 2 tiny steps. Then he fell onto his bottom in the grass, but he didn't cry. He actually let out a joyous laugh as if he were having fun. Branquinho hopped over to him, pressed its nose to his little face, and the baby responded with a clumsy hug. Applause erupted. It was as if each clap was a thank you for everything they had experienced so far. Rosa hugged Francisco and wept with emotion. She had never imagined she would see her son like that, so healthy and full of energy. Months turned into years, and Miguel grew strong and clever. He learned to speak, to run through the fields, to help his father in the fields and his mother in the kitchen. Branquinho continued to appear at the house, though he didn't always stay for long. He would disappear for days, exploring nature, then return as if nothing had happened. Even so, every time he set paw on the porch, Miguel would drop whatever he was doing and run to hug him. They spent time together like old friends, reuniting to share stories. Their story became a local legend. Some people said that Branquinho had special powers, that he was a good luck rabbit. Others said that it was really the family's faith and dedicated care that healed Miguel. There were those who claimed it was all just coincidence, that maybe the baby had been destined to get better anyway, but to Rosa and Francisco, none of that really mattered. What truly mattered was the gratitude they felt for their son's life. One day Miguel, now older, asked his mother why Branquinho liked him so much. Rosa smiled and answered that some things defy explanation. She said that when he was just a sick little baby, the rabbit showed up and made everything better. She explained that sometimes answers come from where we least expect them. Miguel grew thoughtful. He looked out the window and imagined Branquinho running free through the fields, ready to return whenever he felt homesick. And so, the story of Branquinho and Miguel remains alive to this day, not just within the walls of that wooden house, but also in the hearts of everyone who heard about the rabbit that jumped into the crib of a sick baby and brought with it a ray of hope. Anyone who witnessed it up close never forgets the scene of the rabbit snuggled next to the child, as though sent by some greater power to care for him. Those who only heard about it are moved by the knowledge that, in such a vast world, a simple act of kindness can completely transform someone's life. As time goes by, the family remains happy, tending the land, planting dreams and harvesting unforgettable moments. And Branquinho, the white-furred rabbit, continues to roam free, but always returns to that home where he found true friendship and a baby who once needed him more than anything. From this unlikely bond came a story that doesn't fade with the passing years because it speaks of love, courage, and the magic that can be found in life's simplest things.